Hi there, my name is Dr. Parker, and I'm an assistant professor of neurology at the Glenn Biggs Institute for Alzheimer's and Neurodegenerative Diseases. Today, we're going to be discussing clinical trials and new medicines that are offered here at the Biggs Institute. There are no disclosures. In an overview of today's talk, we're going to be discussing typical changes in thinking and memory that happen as a person ages. We're then going to discuss what happens when there's some trouble with memory and a person going to develop mild cognitive impairment or dementia. And then lastly, we're going to go over some research and new medicines that are offered here. So just with typical aging, as a person gets older, there are two things that can happen to how a person thinks. The first thing is that processing speed declines. So the overall rate or speed at which a person thinks can get a little bit slower, and that can make it seem like other things are happening a little bit more slowly as well. The other thing that can happen just with typical aging is that a person can have more difficulty with remembering names, usually of acquaintances that they don't see quite as often, or maybe a little bit of difficulty with figuring out what words they want to say when they're talking. Symptoms outside of that are not attributed to normal aging. And so if there's trouble with recent memory, repeating conversations, other types of trouble with thinking, we develop some cognitive impairment that should really be looked at by your primary care physician or a neurologist. If that amount of cognitive impairment is mild, meaning that there's a little bit of trouble with cognition or thinking, but a person can still function well, then we call that mild cognitive impairment or MCI. If there is enough trouble with cognition that a person can't function as well as they used to, then we would give that a label of dementia or major neurocognitive disorder. With both mild cognitive impairment and dementia, there are a whole host of things that can cause those. Essentially, it's anything that can impact how well the brain functions. Here at the Biggs Institute, we mostly see people who have neurodegenerative disorders such as Alzheimer's, Lewy bodies, etc., that can cause that trouble with thinking. Other etiologies would include vascular cognitive impairment, normal pressure hydrocephalus, cognitive impairment from strokes, all different kinds of things. So a few facts about Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's disease is the most common neurodegenerative disorder which can cause mild cognitive impairment or dementia. About 1 in 3 seniors die with Alzheimer's or another kind of neurodegenerative dementia. Currently, there are more than 6 million Americans that have Alzheimer's. Both women and Hispanics are more likely to develop it, so actually almost 2/3 of Americans with Alzheimer's are women, and Hispanics are 1.5 times as likely to develop Alzheimer's. And so it's a disease overall that has a lot of need for new research and new medicines. So very recently, just in June of 2021, the FDA granted accelerated approval for a new medicine for Alzheimer's disease. That medicine's name is Aducanumab or Aduhelm. That accelerated approval was based on the ability of Aducanumab to decrease something called amyloid protein that can be found in the brains of people who have Alzheimer's. Because Aducanumab at present hasn't been shown to have a clinical benefit, the FDA is requiring that it still undergo monitoring in phase 4 trials just to prove that it has a clinical benefit, meaning improvement in memory or a slowing down of progression of memory loss. And so these 4 phase trials, which will be occurring, will help prove that it does have a clinical benefit in addition to decreasing amyloid. Here at the Biggs Institute, we'll be able to qualify enrolling patients, or we'll be able to enroll qualifying patients, in the phase 4 trial, and we'll then carefully monitor them both clinically and with brain MRIs. Patients who qualify for aducanumab include those who have early-stage mild difficulty with their memory from Alzheimer's, those with confirmed amyloid plaque in the brain, and those with a low risk of serious side effects such as brain swelling or having small bleeding in the brain. As aducanumab was very recently approved, we're still waiting for guidelines on exactly who all should get it and how it will be financially reimbursed by insurance, both for the workup studies for it and for the monitoring studies and for the medicine itself. But I expect that to be coming fairly soon. With regards to our other ongoing clinical trials, there are really quite a number. Today's talk is just going to go over a few of them. So most clinical trials require a study partner or caregiver, someone who's often around the person who has Alzheimer's disease or dementia and can provide additional information about how things are going. Most clinical trials require that the memory medicines such as donepezil, rivastigmine, mementamine, galantamine, etc., have been at consistent doses for some period of time before starting the study. There are much more detailed inclusion and exclusion criteria than we're going to discuss today for each trial, and y'all are welcome to contact us later, and we'll be putting up that information if you'd like to be screened for any of these. So to first start here with our clinical trials, we'll be discussing the AHEAD study, which is looking at a compound that is targeted towards people who are at increased risk of developing Alzheimer's, but do not have any trouble with their memory, so no mild cognitive impairment or dementia. So the AHEAD study is targeted towards people who have amyloid protein in their brains, seen on brain PET scans. And then individuals are given a medicine called BAN2401 to help decrease that amyloid over a 2-year period of time. And the idea there is to track and see how people do and if that reduction in amyloid helps with preclinical disease. Another study here, which is recently coming out, is a phase 3 trial called the Trailblazer trial. This is for people who have mild symptoms for Alzheimer's, so MCI or mild dementia. With the Trailblazer trial, the study medicine Aducanumab was shown in phase 2 trials to decrease amyloid and also to have a slower rate of memory loss, which was quite promising. This medicine is targeted towards older people who are about 60 to 85 years old and runs over a 2.5-year period, so there's about 26 study visits in that. That study includes amyloid and tau PET brain scans and blood work, as well as clinical exams and follow-up. Another study targeted towards those with mild cognitive impairment or mild dementia from Alzheimer's is something called the Carpe Diem study, in which a medicine called rapamycin is given, which has been shown to improve cerebral blood flow and decrease neuroinflammation. And so that one is 8 study visits over a total of 18 weeks. We somewhat similarly have the REACH study, which is also looking at rapamycin, which is about 15 visits over 90 weeks. And then also in mild dementia and MCI from Alzheimer's, we have the ART-AD study, which is looking at the antiretroviral 3TC, which is thought to slow a disease mechanism present in early Alzheimer's disease. With the ART-AD study, patients cannot be on memantine, but it's okay for them to be on the other cholinergic medicines. With the ART-AD study, that is over a duration of 24 weeks. We then have the STOP-AD study, also for patients who have mild cognitive impairment or mild dementia from Alzheimer's, in which daxonimab and quercetin modulates senolytic cells, and that's over 12 weeks. In addition to these research opportunities for people with mild cognitive impairment and mild dementia from Alzheimer's, we have a whole host of other research studies for people with normal cognition, people with vascular dementia, frontotemporal dementia, Parkinson's disease, and also for caregivers. Anyone in general can participate in a few of our large observational studies, such as the Biggs Biobank, in which samples such as the saliva and the blood are collected, and we can use those to create a library of biomarker samples for future research. Similarly, the Microbiome Project is looking at stool and saliva samples to look at different biomarkers for things that can influence how a person develops a disease and what their prognosis is, how treatments might do in different kinds of patients. And then lastly, we have the brain donation program, in which brains can be donated after a person passes to help with research to figure out the exact causes of why these diseases occur and how to treat them. So thank you very much. If y'all would like to reach out, please visit us at thebiggsinstitute.org or at 210-450-9960. Thank you and have a great day.